is the world of AI today with the market rate reaction?
Well, I guess, equity markets tend to like interest rate cuts as opposed to interest rate hikes. So we are on what was the widely expected path. So
Yeah.
Usually, if you're on the expected path, the rate's going down. These are generally good things for equities.
Yeah, I mean, no news is good news. I mean, because it's built in. Of course, I've seen, the markets react in a totally unexpected way. They're like, "Well, big deal. We knew it was going to come." So, but we'll take it as a good thing right now. I think broadly, obviously, the rate cuts help, but within the tech space, it definitely, I think, helps more than it does in the other areas. Just hoping for like borrowing rates to come down and so forth. But well, we're not here to talk about rates per se because we could talk all day long on that. But so, I mean, my introduction to you will be as not just the head of global research, but you are a specialist in the technology space, and more specifically, you can tear the AI apart. And not sure if Mike knows, but I've been running the AI portfolio under the name G Theory, as you might have seen in my little write up. And a guest like you is perfect because we can dig a little deeper on that. And we had this discussion a little bit before, but when you say AI, if at all people understand it at all, they tend to be like, oh, this extreme viewpoint of either, oh, we're going to Mars or it's the end of the world. And maybe the truth is somewhere in between. And I'm of the mindset that they always believe in any technological revolution we're going to lose jobs and so forth. And I always say it's not that we lose jobs, we just create different types of jobs. And I mean, we'll see if that holds. It's a different type of revolution, but I still fundamentally believe that. But I also believe we have gone through the foundational phase, which was that phase one, and all these big models, and going into the phase of the beneficiaries. So if you can shed some light on that, that would be great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was the jobs discussion. It's a discussion that you can never get away from, especially in earnings season, especially when a lot of the big companies are noting years of efficiency or pushes towards efficiency. What has come up in a few different spots, and I really like it as an example. There's a professor, Jeff Hinton. He worked at Google for a number of years. He won a Nobel Prize. He invented the fancy term is backpropagation, which is just, again, a fancy way of saying how a neural network can sort of pass information through it such that the weights on the different nodes can improve the predictive power such that if you're running images, you can actually recognize accurately what the image is, or if you're running speech, you can predict accurately the next thing that the user might want to see. And he made a statement, it was either 2015 or 2016, so right about 10 years ago, that if you're studying to be a radiologist, and if we think, what does a radiologist do? There's some sort of image, an X-ray, a CAT scan, an MRI, those kinds of things. The radiologist is there, they're looking at the image, they're figuring out what's either wrong or not wrong, and
right,
giving you a diagnosis. And he was saying in 2016, 2015, about 10 years ago, there's not going to be a need for any more radiologists. And it was interesting to hear Jensen Huang on the Joe Rogan podcast very recently talking about this exact thing. And he made an interesting point. If the only job of the radiologist is to literally look at the image and interpret, then you're absolutely right. There should be no more people doing that job because the AI can look at the image, come up with an interpretation. But if you look at what's actually happened, there's actually more radiologists spread across hospitals across the US and abroad because the tools are making the radiologists better. They're making the radiologists more efficient, more throughput, meaning you're seeing more patients. In the US, what does that mean? You're billing more insurance companies or you're billing Medicare or Medicaid more. So the hospital is now making more money. So they're certainly inspired to have more radiologists running these systems. And so it's an interesting case where the initial interpretation was, do we really need this role anymore? The 10-year into it interpretation looks like not only do you need the role, but you want the role because you're getting a return on investing in those people and using AI alongside those people. And I keep coming back to what Jensen Huang, again, the founder, current CEO of NVIDIA, if the job is merely the task and nothing more, then yeah, AI, it's probably going to replace it. If the job is many more things, like being a radiologist might be more about talking to the people, diagnosing the disease, dealing with everything that sort of goes around that, as opposed to literally just interpreting the image. Now the person is that much better, that much more empowered to do a better total job as opposed to needing to focus as much on one particular thing. So just thought that was an interesting, very recent case study that gives us about 10 years to look back and just genuinely see. Again, this guy won a Nobel Prize
Right.
for what we're talking about today, and he didn't even get it right.
Yeah, right. And that's a very valid point. And I mean, I'm thinking about it as we're speaking. Well, not only makes the radiologist better, but it probably goes all the way up to the doctor level where he has more information and can, part of saying that AI is going to advance our medical technology and so forth. I think part of that is these type of things, it's not just limited to, okay, it might come up with some cures and treatments and so forth, but you still need the doctors to implement those things. And they need to be in the understanding phase of it. I mean, just like they go through their CEs, this will be like part of their CEs almost, I think. It kind of reminds me a little bit, not to the same degree, but a little bit of the robo advisor is going to replace the regular advisor. Well, not really, because people don't know what they're doing. So, but like you said, if the only job of investing in the market was to put in some numbers into a quant model, yes, that's 100% true. But everything doesn't come down to like a mathematical equation. Excellent point. And it is things like that, I think, that kind of blindside. Not blindside as much as it puts people in that fear factor until they're like, well, wait a minute, they said that in the 90s and so forth. Going back to the Industrial Revolution, they said this is going to kill jobs. This is going to. As you probably know, there were these big protests against wide industries. But technology in general has served us well. So I think it'll continue to serve us well, with some expected hiccups along the way, but that's part of the evolution, I think. I kind of equate it to the gold rush that's over now. It's not the gold rush, but it's, not the picks and the shovels, but it's now the people, the vendors that were selling the gold and the retailers or the jewelers and so forth. Similarly, in this space, I think that's where we're seeing better output from the companies. And they're not necessarily tech companies, but there's companies that are taking advantage of it in the right way and really increasing their margins in building that efficiency. And can you talk to what you're seeing out there, and if that is kind of the direction right now we're in?
Yeah, it's interesting in the sense you step back and you say when we think of the picks and shovels in this context, it's sort of like that's thinking of Nvidia in the sense that it's just to put ourselves on the timeline. About 3 years ago, so it's not that long ago on the calendar. You flip the yearly calendar back only 3 times. You get to ChatGPT is launched. And little did any of us know. If we knew, what would we have done? We would have bought a heck of a lot of NVIDIA. But if you're like me, you did not necessarily do that. And you're just kicking yourself, even though you're following the space, kicking yourself for not putting enough money in NVIDIA at that time. The quintessential pick and shovel that has, depending on the day that you look at it, has eclipsed 5 trillion in market cap, the first company ever to do so. So it's absolutely wild what we've seen there. And it's sort of like, and I like how you're phrasing it because it's sort of like, okay, what happens next? And it's not that you ignore NVIDIA because every time NVIDIA does their quarterly earnings, it's now a global event. Even if they announce anything at all, seemingly it's a global event. So whether it's something about revenue, something about other accounting metrics, the depreciation of the actual chip itself is a big discussion. So everything NVIDIA does is now looked at under scrutiny, under the microscope. But you sort of look across the economy. There was a great example that we saw at WisdomTree, Casey's General Store, which is something in the Midwest where they have you go there, you can buy gas, you go there, you can buy pizza, you go there, you can. It's sort of that convenience store type mentality, and they in their earnings calls would mention using AI to bring efficiencies to making sure the pizza was fresher, the pizza was ready in a different way, the ingredients were dealt with, the inventories were dealt with. And you think of what we're seeing in the economy right now, which is every other quote is the bifurcation of there are people with good amount of money and they keep buying stuff, and then there are people with less money and they're under pressure, which seems like it would normally be the case, but you're hearing that a lot now. So a business like a Casey's General Store, where it's not a high-end luxury, it's not selling the iPhone, it's every basis point of margin matters. And in recent earnings calls, they have been able to note that using AI has made their business better. And in a tough area of the market, which again is not just going through the roof. It's not, I'm purposely trying not to use a software company example. We can talk about software company examples, but this is a real economy example in the center of the United States, seeing good results because they're using AI to help improve their business.
Yeah, excellent point. And you could almost say, or would you say that, like going forward, when we look at companies and we say, are they doing this right, that right? These are the fundamentals of their operations and so forth. So you could make a case that, well, how are they using AI? And are they good at it? If they're good at it, that's making them a better company, like Casey's. And like you said, like, sure, there's the actual outright software companies. We know that. But these, I think, are the silent winners. And I mean, getting NVIDIA early, I mean, you're striking gold. Yeah. It's funny because people will say, oh, why did you get into NVIDIA when it was like 3 years ago or whenever it was? And I said, well, because NVIDIA didn't know they were going to be NVIDIA.
Yeah, you listen to Jensen on. He's a nervous guy. He's always worried.
Yeah.
It's amazing to hear that.
Yeah. But I will say this. I mean, that, and correct me, if I'm wrong here, but when you look at from a valuation standpoint, and you take the Max 7, and NVIDIA looks big and all that, but when you look at their earnings versus the other 6, they're actually okay. I mean, it's almost justified where they're, whereas the other guys, they might be arguably frothy and, so at least NVIDIA is putting some, I was going to say putting the chips on the table, no pun intended. um, yeah, and I mean, the only question, I guess, with an NVIDIA or much like anything else is that, well, okay, are there going to be competitors? Maybe, maybe not. It could be like a Google situation. There's competitors, but not enough to hold Google down. So, I mean, that remains to be seen. And I know people talk every time there's news about some chip maker doing this, this, and that. There's a little bit of talk about, oh, this is going to take NVIDIA down. Maybe I don't know. I don't know what what you're seeing on the inside there, but I feel a lot of times there's a lot of noise there, but not a lot of substance. So
There's an awful lot of noise. In the past few days, there is a discussion I just saw. If you want a good example of noise and kind of how these things can get blown out of proportion, a few people have been talking about years from now that maybe putting data centers in space, there could be certain benefits to that. There could be better access to solar energy,
right,
for power purposes, cooling. I mean, it's basically absolute zero temperature wise up there, so cooling is a lot easier. But obviously, it's not easy to get all this stuff, this hardware, from the surface of the Earth into space, and to do it in a way where
right,
it's not worried about the radiation. It's not worried about reasonable debris and things like that. And I just saw a headline that's basically saying you have Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk racing to put data centers in space, which is patently not a 2025. Like, it is still December 2025. That is not a 2025 or a 2026 reality. But to the point, I mean, it's absolutely true. What did Google announce, or Alphabet, depending on the name that we know them as today? What did they announce a few weeks ago? They announced that their tensor processing unit, if anyone sees in the media, the TPU,
right,
it's a slightly different chip architecture than the GPU, the graphics processing unit that NVIDIA puts out there and that AMD puts out there. They basically announced, instead of keeping the TPU for itself, which has been the case for, call it 10, 12 years. Google would make these chips that were optimized to help Google do a better job with internet search, to help Google do a better job with YouTube, with advertising. So all the things that made Alphabet, the company, into the 3 trillion market cap behemoth, the TPU was behind making those things work better. And what they announced a few weeks ago was, we're going to make these chips available to external users. So if you're running a cloud cluster of some kind, it would be difficult for a regular person to say, I'm going to buy one CPU. That's probably not the main customer. It's probably, your Core Weaves of the world, your Amazon Web Services of the world, the giant cloud clusters. At least this is what would be material to revenue if the market picked up. But essentially, what's really happening is not that the TPU is competing and going to supersede NVIDIA. That would be a very bold prediction, one that I am now making. Mm-hmm. But it's very clear that all the different cloud providers that are building these giant, they call them gigawatt scale clusters. They're so big,
right?
You define the cluster by the amount of power that it takes in. And 1 gigawatt is basically a small city's worth of power usage. And everyone is diversifying the different types of chips they're using, because that's going to have NVIDIA in the long run have less market power, less of a monopoly. Because if NVIDIA is the only choice,
right,
their margin is going to be like 80 or 90%. And none of these guys want that.
Right, 100%. Did I hear you say gigawatt or giga?
Gigawatt. It is. You look at the word, it's GIEA is the prefix.
Right.
So you can pronounce it gigawatt. So yes, we have come all the way around. Back to the future type stuff going on here.
Yeah.
Because it's a billion watts.
Right.
You might have heard megawatts before, a million watts. Mm-hmm. We're now in the billions of watts. If you hear country consumption of power, you might see terawatts. That's trillions of watts. But what you'll hear is Sam Altman wants to have 10 gigawatts of compute infrastructure, or Oracle, which the day we're doing this recording, Oracle is in a few hours going to report their earnings.
I know.
It's kind of funny. That's probably going to have a much bigger impact than anything that Jerome Powell and the Fed are saying, at least on the tech market. And they are putting a few gigawatts. It's known as the Stargate project in Abilene, Texas. So this gigawatt scale cluster thing is the new big thing that all these companies are putting out there.
Yeah. It's funny you should say Oracle because, you know, it just in a group of companies that I might be looking at, and I'm looking at Oracle, and then I look to the right side, earnings call. I'm like, today, I'm like, so we gotta hold off on that one.
It's come down. I mean, Oracle got so much attention on the last earnings because there's this term. If anyone saw it in the news, it would be RPO, remaining performance obligation. It's sort of like a backlog. And there was the announcement that I think starting in 2027, they're going to ramp up providing a certain amount of compute infrastructure to OpenAI and Sam Altman. And over the course of the length of this deal, which, you know, could be 5, 7, however many years, the total value of the deal might be, when all is said and done, around $300 billion. And I think their total remaining performance obligation was reported well above $400 billion. So you're sitting there, you're saying, wow, that's quite an impressive backlog. Of course, the market most likely got too excited too quickly. Yeah. Because what do they have to do right now? They still have to build these gigawatt scale clusters and put the NVIDIA, the AMD, possibly the TPU chips, get everything working. It's not instant. It's not you snap your fingers and this is immediately done. Elon Musk at XAI is probably the fastest, and it still takes him a few months to get these things up and running. You got to get the power. You got to get the natural gas turbines going. If they're in Texas, it's most likely natural gas. So you got to get enough of the turbines going. You have to get everything set up. That's why it's, you know, most likely starting in 2027. And you see it all through. It could be an incredible deal for Oracle, but it's absolutely, in my opinion, it's absolutely too early to know one way or the other exactly how it's going. We basically have an announcement. We have, you know, the memorandum of understanding or something like that on paper. Yeah. And now we have to at least give it a shot at seeing what they talk about quarter to quarter. Yeah. Seeing that good progress is being made, but not necessarily over expecting that, you know, the laws of physics are changing or we're suddenly going to be able to turn on a data center that doesn't even exist yet.
Yeah. I mean, I know you said the market overreacting. I'm like, never, you know. But you're right, you know, because there was like that brief period where it shot up like crazy, and like everybody was like, "Oh, we should have Oracle, this and that," and I'm like, before they could even finish that sentence, it was like all the way, it was making that correction right there,
all the way back down.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, but I mean, you know, the general direction I feel right now is it's almost like you have a Michael Jordan on your team. How's your bench? You know, and the other companies are like the bench because they're going to be just as important because it's never going to be a one-man show. And I mean, with Google, I mean, of course, I didn't know what exactly, but I'm not surprised at all because for the last 3 years before their run-up started again, they were, you know, constantly going down or staying flat at best. And I said to people, I mean, these are one of those stocks you want to keep buying right now because it is Google. They're no dummies. You know, I'm sure they're thinking about it, whatever they're thinking about, but to be competitive. So, you know, but again, I mean, I believe that at one point the way they thought of tech stocks in general as like, oh, that one different sector, and now like, I mean, they might still think about it that way, but that tech stock to me is like it's an old like an industrial company that used to be the the stalwarts of the economy. I think we'll get to a point where like when one says AI, well, it's like, well, what part of AI? Because there's so many things. Yeah, I mean, would you agree with that broader statement?
It's fascinating when you're looking at the portfolio of Berkshire Hathaway
Uh-huh.
and you see not only Apple, and you look at that Apple, which is one of these companies where it's a real head scratcher. On the one hand, they have Apple Intelligence, AI, great branding. On the other hand, you're saying, I'm an iPhone user myself. Did Siri seem to get any smarter at all over the last 3 years? If so, I cannot see it. I cannot determine it. I don't know. Does Apple have a notable large language model or any sort of effort like some of these other companies? If they do, I don't know about it. Seeing it, like you're seeing a business
Correct.
that is going to sell, like you almost know, like clockwork, on an annual basis. Apple, like a bad year, they might sell 215 million iPhones, which is still a huge number.
Right.
The average price is still $1,000 or something close to that. And in a great year where people get excited, maybe it's 230 million or 240 million or possibly even a bit more than that. It's a
Sure.
real blockbuster year. And the 16, which was last year, was not necessarily the blockbuster year. The 17, it seems that people are a bit more excited. But again, there's nothing
You're
AI
right.
amazing or magnificent that people might just be at that point where they use the phones 3-4 years now and they upgrade. And you get the Apple Watch and you get the AirPods,
Right.
and you're getting this ecosystem of devices. And they do a great job at making these devices. But what you haven't had, going all the way back to Steve Jobs, you haven't necessarily had a blockbuster, putting a dent in the universe, creation of a new category. You've had a business.
Correct.
To your point, is almost now like an industrial conglomerate, which is managing a globally dispersed set of different suppliers that have all these different expertise. And the batteries are getting a bit better every year, and the capacities and the memory is getting bigger every year, and the glass and all the tech is getting better every year, and they do an incredible job. But you step back and say, is there a blockbuster under the hood? And it's hard to see. Maybe it'll be something around robotics in the future, but that's just prognostication. We're talking about a car a few years ago.
Yeah,
really materialized.
exactly.
So it is a company that's been held by Buffett and Berkshire Hathaway for quite some time, and they tend to only hold these long-standing brand name industrial companies. And now they actually just announced in the most recent quarter that they hold Alphabet.
Right.
Which is quite an interesting stamp for a growth company, such that they're looking from their lens and thinking, wow, this company is just ensconced. Like the classic Berkshire company to me,
Correct.
Coca-Cola.
Yeah, right.
Like, it's part of the culture. It's not going anywhere.
Yeah.
And you're basically making a statement that the cell phone market, because they have Apple, they've been trimming down Apple, and now they have Alphabet. So they have the Android and the iOS system. So they basically have global smartphones.
Yeah, exactly.
Global smartphones aren't going anywhere.
Yeah, I mean, for them, that's the moat. And I think, like to your point, I mean, has Siri gotten smart? No. They've been updated with all the newer apps and all that stuff. But at the end of the day, they're a well-run business more than a tech company. But yeah, I mean, they've kind of made their entire business a subscription model because
yes, they locked us all in.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I'm as guilty as anybody else. So
it's too annoying to switch. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. And people ask me like, "Well, what does this have that the other one?" I'm like, I don't know. I just need to know that I have. But that was great. What I specifically liked about your conversation with us here is that that's the real world AI that people need to be maybe more focused on at the kitchen table and not not be talking about these power stations in space, you know. I mean,
fun to discuss, fun to hear about, fun to see
exactly.
Elon Musk amplifying tweets and what have you. But again, it's not that it won't happen. It's just that people are trying to get excited today about that topic. That topic, we're not going to know what we need to know.
I mean,
for quite some time.
Yeah, a long time, and it's just one of those. I mean, it conceptually, sure, yeah. I mean, like I'm for it, but it's like it's right now a very much work in theory. So because there's so many unknown factors in that and I think part of it is also to create the buzz that
Absolutely.
Yes. I'm Elon Musk and I'm going to be doing this, or I'm Bezos and I'm going to be doing this, so which, I mean, I guess that's true for a lot of things, maybe because the noise before the actual realities kick in. But I mean, at a much broader level, I mean, yeah, I think I like the space going forward, being a little selective, maybe, and it's just like any other investment. You just gotta pick your what. Easy to say, pick your winners, but I mean, at least I think of the way Charles A. Munger said, he said, just don't pick the losers.
Yes.